Welcome to Justice Served. My sister Cassandra stole my fiancé Devon the day before my wedding, convinced she was getting the prize. What she didn't know was that I had hired a private investigator 3 weeks earlier, and what he discovered would destroy not just her fairy tale, but her entire future. My name is Raven Mitchell, I'm 29 years old, and if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Grandview Manor looked like something from a magazine cover that morning. Ivory roses cascaded down marble columns, crystal chandeliers caught the early sunlight, and 200 white chairs sat perfectly arranged on the manicured lawn. Everything I had dreamed of since I was 12 years old, sketching wedding dresses in the margins of my notebooks while other kids played outside. I stood in the bridal suite on the third floor, watching the florists make final adjustments to the arch where I would marry Devon in exactly 24 hours. My hands trembled slightly as I held the final payment check for the photographer, $12,000 that represented 6 months of overtime shifts at the marketing firm where I worked as a senior account manager. Every detail of this wedding had been meticulously planned, budgeted for, and earned through 60-hour work weeks and skipped vacations. The dress hanging behind me cost more than my car payment, not because I was frivolous, but because this was supposed to be the most important day of my life. Vera Wang's signature creation in silk mikado, with hand-sewn pearls that caught light like captured stars. I had found it at a trunk show in downtown Millbrook 8 months ago, fell in love instantly, and worked 3 part-time jobs and weekends to afford it without touching my savings account. Devon and I had been together for 3 years. We met at a charity gala where my company was sponsoring tables. I was there networking. He was there because his construction business had donated services for the venue renovation. He wasn't the type I usually dated. Where my previous relationships had been with polished corporate men who spoke in quarterly projections and golf handicaps, Devon wore work boots and had calloused hands that told stories of actual labor. But there was something magnetic about his confidence, the way he commanded respect from his crew of 12 men who had been with his company for years. Devon had built his business from nothing after his father's trucking company went bankrupt when he was 22. While other people his age were still figuring out their majors, he was learning to read blueprints and manage payroll. Our relationship moved steadily, but not rushed. He proposed on the anniversary of our first date at the same charity gala where we met, with a ring he had designed himself, a 2-carat emerald cut diamond set in platinum with tiny sapphires around the band that matched my eyes. He got down on one knee right there on the dance floor in front of 300 people, and when I said yes, the entire room erupted in applause. The engagement period had been blissful but busy. Between planning the wedding and managing my growing client portfolio, I barely had time to breathe. Devon was equally swamped, having landed the biggest contract in his company's history, a mixed-use development in the Riverside district that would keep his crews busy for 2 years and establish Sterling Construction as a major player in the regional market. We saw each other mostly on weekends, quick dinners when our schedules aligned, and Sunday mornings when we would lie in bed reading different sections of the newspaper and sharing coffee. It wasn't passionate in the way movies portray love, but it was stable, comfortable, and built on genuine respect for each other's ambitions. My sister Cassandra had been increasingly involved in the wedding planning over the past 3 months. At 26, she was between jobs again, something that happened regularly since she graduated from college with a degree in art history that she had never used practically. Where I had always been the responsible older sister, working since I was 16 and putting myself through business school, Cassandra floated through life assuming opportunities would present themselves. She was beautiful in an effortless way that made people do double takes on the street. Long auburn hair that looked professionally styled even when she rolled out of bed, green eyes that sparkled with mischief, and the kind of natural charisma that made everyone want to be her friend. I loved her fiercely. But I also knew she had a pattern of wanting whatever I had, then losing interest once she got it. When we were teenagers, she borrowed my clothes without asking and somehow looked better in them than I did. In college, she briefly dated my ex-boyfriend just weeks after our breakup, claiming she was helping me get over him by proving he wasn't worth my time. She had a way of making her selfishness sound like generosity, her impulsivity seem like spontaneity. But this felt different. Cassandra seemed genuinely excited about my wedding, offering to help with vendor coordination and even volunteering to handle the rehearsal dinner logistics. She spent hours with me tasting cakes, comparing flower arrangements, and addressing invitations in her beautiful handwriting. For the first time in years, we felt like real sisters instead of competitors. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for 6 o'clock that evening at Meridian Restaurant, an upscale bistro overlooking Cedar Lake where Devon and I had our first official date. 42 guests, immediate family, the wedding party, and a few close friends who had traveled from out of state. Nothing elaborate, but elegant. The kind of evening where everyone could relax before the main event, share stories about Devon and me, and celebrate the beginning of our new chapter. I checked my phone for the 100th time that morning. No messages from Devon, which was unusual. He typically sent me good morning texts, even during his busiest weeks. But I assumed he was handling last-minute details with his groomsmen or dealing with some crisis at the construction site. Running a business meant emergencies didn't respect personal schedules. My phone buzzed with a text from my wedding planner, Miranda Chen. Final headcount confirmed, weather forecast perfect, everything on track for a magical day tomorrow. Get some rest tonight. I smiled, feeling a flutter of excitement mixed with nerves. Tomorrow, I would walk down that aisle toward the man I planned to build a life with. We would exchange vows I had spent weeks writing and rewriting, promising to support each other's dreams and weather whatever challenges came our way. Our friends and family would witness our commitment, then celebrate with dinner, dancing, and the kind of joy that comes from seeing two people choose each other completely. Standing there in that bridal suite, surrounded by the evidence of months of careful planning and years of patient saving, I felt proud of what I had built. Not just the wedding, but the life that had led to this moment. I had worked hard to become the kind of woman who could afford her own dream wedding, who had something real to offer a partnership, who had earned the right to celebrate this loudly and beautifully. What I didn't know was that in 18 hours, I would discover that the most important person in that equation had already made a very different choice. And the sister I trusted to help me celebrate would be the one holding the match that burned it all down. Preparing and narrating the story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The first sign something was wrong came at 4:47 p.m., exactly 1 hour and 13 minutes before the rehearsal dinner was supposed to start. I was getting my nails touched up at Luxe Salon when my phone rang. It was my maid of honor, Thea Rodriguez, and her voice had that carefully controlled tone people use when they're trying not to panic you. Raven, honey, where are you right now? Getting my nails done. Why? Please tell me the flowers didn't die or something catastrophic like that. I laughed, but something cold settled in my stomach. I need you to come to Meridian Restaurant, now. Don't drive yourself, call an Uber, or ask someone to bring you. My hand holding the phone started shaking. Thea, you're scaring me. What happened? Is Devon okay? Did someone get hurt? There was a pause that lasted forever. Devon is physically fine. But Raven, I need you to get here. I can't explain this over the phone. I left the salon with wet nails, my hands trembling so badly I could barely type the address into my Uber app. The 20-minute drive to Cedar Lake felt like hours. I called Devon 3 times, straight to voicemail. I called my mom, no answer. I called Cassandra, thinking maybe she would know what was happening. Hey, sis! She voice was bright, almost giddy. What's up? Something's wrong. Thea called me and told me to get to the restaurant immediately. Have you heard from Devon or Mom? Oh, no, I haven't heard from anyone. I'm actually running a bit late myself. Traffic, you know? Something about her response felt off, but I was too worried to analyze it. Okay, well, I'm almost there. I'll see you soon. Raven, her voice caught slightly. Whatever happens tonight, just remember that I love you, okay? Before I could ask what she meant, she hung up. The Uber pulled up to Meridian Restaurant at 5:23 p.m. The valet parking area was full, which seemed normal for a Friday evening, but I noticed several cars I recognized from our guest list. My parents' silver Mercedes, Devon's black pickup, my Aunt Linda's distinctive red Prius with the Coexist bumper sticker. Thea was waiting for me in the lobby, her face pale and her usual composure completely gone. She grabbed my arm the moment I walked through the door. "Before you see anything, I want you to know that we all tried to stop this. Your mom, your aunt, even some of the groomsmen, but they wouldn't listen." "Thea, what are you talking about? Stop what?" Instead of answering, she led me through the main dining room toward the private event space we had reserved for the rehearsal dinner. I could hear voices, some raised, some hushed, the sound of silverware clinking against plates, normal dinner party sounds that felt surreal given the dread building in my chest. And then I saw them.
At the head table where Devon and I were supposed to be seated, Devon sat next to Cassandra. Not just next to her, close to her. His arm around the back of her chair, her hand resting on his thigh. She was wearing the emerald green dress I had helped her pick out last week, the one she said would photograph well as my maid of honor. But she wasn't sitting in the maid of honor seat. She was sitting in mine. Devon was speaking to the room, holding a champagne flute, his face animated in the way it got when he was excited about something. I couldn't hear his exact words from the doorway, but I caught fragments. "Follow your heart. Sometimes love surprises you. Grateful for understanding." My Aunt Linda looked up and saw me in the doorway. Her face crumpled, and she quickly looked away. My father was staring at his plate, his jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscle jumping. My mother had tears in her eyes. That's when Devon's words became clear. "Which is why Cassandra and I have decided to elope tonight instead of going through with tomorrow's ceremony. We realize that when you find your soulmate, you shouldn't wait another day to start your life together." The room erupted. Not in celebration, but in chaos. My Uncle Ben stood up so fast his chair fell over. "This is disgusting," he shouted. "How could you do this to Raven?" Devon's best man, Kyle, was shaking his head. "Man, this is not how we talked about handling this." My mother finally found her voice. "Cassandra, think about what you're doing. This is your sister, your only sister." But Cassandra just smiled that radiant smile that had been getting her out of trouble her entire life. "Mom, you can't help who you fall in love with. Raven will understand eventually. She's always been the practical one. She'll see that this is better for everyone." That's when Devon looked up and saw me standing in the doorway. His face went white. The champagne flute slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor, the sound cutting through the arguing voices like a gunshot. The entire room went silent. "Raven," his voice was barely above a whisper, I was going to call you." I stepped into the room on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Every face turned toward me, some sympathetic, some shocked, some angry on my behalf. But the two faces I focused on were the ones at the head table. Devon looked guilty but not remorseful, like a man who had been caught doing something he knew was wrong but felt justified in doing anyway. And Cassandra looked triumphant, glowing, like she had just won the lottery. "Call me," I found my voice, though it sounded strange and distant to my own ears. "Call me to tell me what, exactly? That you've decided to marry my sister instead of me? The night before our wedding?" "It just happened," Devon said, standing up. "Raven, I swear we didn't plan this. But over the past few weeks, helping with the wedding planning, spending so much time together, we realized we have this connection that I thought was just what, Devon? Just what, Devon?" Cassandra reached for his hand. "Raven, please don't make this harder than it has to be. Devon and I are in love, real love, the kind that can't be ignored or postponed." The room was dead silent except for the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. 42 people who had come to celebrate my marriage tomorrow night were now witnessing the most humiliating moment of my life. "How long?" I asked quietly. How long what? Cassandra's voice had an edge to it now. How long have you been sleeping with my fiancé? Devon flinched. Raven, it's not like that. It's not sordid or... How long? Cassandra lifted her chin defiantly. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. While I was working overtime to pay for the final wedding expenses, while I was confirming RSVPs and writing my vows, while I was trusting her to help me with the most important day of my life. My Aunt Linda stood up. I'm not staying for this circus. Cassandra, you should be ashamed of yourself. Other guests began gathering their purses and jackets. The rehearsal dinner I had planned for months was dissolving into chaos, with family members taking sides and friends looking uncomfortable and desperate to escape. But I didn't move. I stood there, staring at my sister and my fiancé, memorizing the way they looked in that moment. The way Cassandra's hand possessively gripped Devon's arm, the way Devon couldn't quite meet my eyes, but didn't seem particularly devastated by the situation either. The wedding is tomorrow, I said finally. 300 guests, $50,000 in deposits. We'll help you cancel everything, Devon said quickly. I'll pay for whatever we can't get back. I almost laughed. You'll pay? With what money? The money you borrowed from me last month for your equipment down payment? His face flushed red. Apparently, he hadn't shared that detail with Cassandra, whose smile faltered for the first time. This is about more than money, Cassandra said, her voice rising. This is about Devon finally admitting that he was settling when he proposed to you. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but isn't it better that he's honest now instead of after you're married? The cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. Not just the betrayal, but the way she was twisting it to make herself the hero of the story. The way she was making my humiliation sound like her gift to me.
I looked around the room one more time, at the guests who couldn't look at me, at the beautiful table settings for a celebration that would never happen, at the life I thought I was building, crumbling in real time. Then I looked back at Cassandra and Devon, sitting there holding hands like they were the victims in this situation. You know what? I said, my voice getting stronger. You're right. It is better that I know now. I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind the wreckage of my rehearsal dinner and the sound of Cassandra calling my name. But as I waited for my Uber in the parking lot, I wasn't crying. I was thinking. And I was remembering the phone number of the private investigator I had called 3 weeks ago when I first noticed Devon acting strange. Because the thing about people who betray you so easily is that they're usually betraying more than just you. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't face my empty apartment where my wedding dress was hanging in the closet and my honeymoon suitcase sat packed by the door. Instead, I drove to the Riverview Hotel downtown and paid for a suite with a view of the city lights, using the credit card I had been saving for wedding emergencies. The irony wasn't lost on me. I sat on the edge of the king-size bed at 11:47 p.m., still wearing the navy blue dress I had chosen for the rehearsal dinner, and called Marcus Henley, the private investigator whose business card had been sitting in my wallet for 3 weeks. Raven Mitchell? I said when he answered on the second ring, even though it was almost midnight. We spoke last month about my concerns regarding my fiancé's behavior. Right, the construction business owner. You decided not to proceed with the investigation? Has something changed? Everything has changed. They eloped tonight. There was a pause. Your fiancé and who? My sister. Another pause, longer this time. I see. And you'd like to proceed with the investigation now? I want to know everything. Financial records, phone records, how long this has really been going on, who else knew, everything you can legally obtain. Miss Mitchell, I have to ask, what are you hoping to accomplish? Sometimes in cases like this, the truth doesn't provide the closure people think it will. I looked out at the city lights, thinking about Cassandra's triumphant smile and Devon's weak excuses. Mr. Henley, my sister has spent 26 years taking things from me and making me feel guilty for wanting them back. My ex-fiancé just humiliated me in front of my entire family and convinced himself he was doing me a favor. I don't want closure. I want ammunition. Understood. I can have preliminary findings for you by Monday. I need them tomorrow. Money is no object. The next morning, which should have been my wedding day, I woke up to 47 missed calls and 118 text messages. Most were from well-meaning relatives and friends who had heard about the rehearsal dinner disaster and wanted to check on me. Some were from vendors asking about payment and delivery schedules for a wedding that was no longer happening. But the ones that made my blood boil were from Cassandra. "Raven, please call me. We need to talk about this like adults. I know you're hurt, but you're being dramatic. Devon was never really happy with you. Mom wants us to have lunch today to work this out as a family. Stop ignoring me. The silent treatment is childish. Fine, be petty, but I'm not apologizing for falling in love." I screenshotted every message and forwarded them to Marcus Henley. Then I turned my phone to airplane mode and ordered room service. At 2:15 p.m., exactly when I should have been walking down the aisle at Grandview Manor, I was sitting in Marcus Henley's office reviewing a stack of documents that painted a very different picture of my ex-fiancé than the one I thought I knew. "Your instincts were correct," Marcus said, sliding a manila folder across his desk. "Devon Sterling has been having financial difficulties for months. His big contract is, the client hasn't paid him a dime yet, and he's been using credit cards and personal loans to pay his crew and cover material costs." I opened the folder and saw bank statements, credit reports, and loan applications. Devon's signature on documents requesting emergency funding, late payment notices from suppliers, and correspondence with creditors demanding payment. How much debt is he in? Close to $200,000. His business account has been overdrawn for 6 weeks. He's behind on his truck payments, his equipment loans, and he owes back taxes to the state. The room felt like it was spinning. But he was paying for the honeymoon. He insisted on covering the resort in Tuscany. Marcus pulled out another document, paid for with a cash advance from a credit card that's already maxed out. The payment bounced yesterday. The resort canceled your reservation this morning. I stared at the paperwork, remembering all the times Devon had insisted on paying for dinner, all the expensive gifts he had given me during our engagement, the diamond bracelet for my birthday, the weekend trip to Napa Valley, the upgrades to my engagement ring just 2 months ago.
He was spending money he didn't have to impress me, I said slowly. It appears so. But here's where it gets interesting. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed me a series of photographs. Your sister has been meeting with someone else regularly for the past month, not your fiancé, a different man entirely. The photos showed Cassandra at various upscale restaurants and hotel bars with a distinguished older man in expensive suits. In one photo, they were holding hands across a dinner table. In another, he was kissing her cheek while she laughed. Who is he? Jonathan Whitmore, 62 years old, recently divorced, CEO of Whitmore Development Group, worth approximately $47 million. My mind started connecting dots I didn't want to connect. Whitmore Development. They're the ones building that mixed-use project that Devon got the contract for. Marcus nodded grimly. The same project that hasn't paid him yet because they're waiting for permits and financing to finalize. But here's the thing. Mr. Whitmore has been seen with your sister since 3 weeks before your fiancé's contract was supposed to pay paying out. The timeline was becoming clear, and it was uglier than I had imagined. She wasn't stealing Devon because she wanted him. She was stealing Devon because she needed him gone while she pursued Whitmore. That's my assessment. Based on the financial records and the timeline, it appears your sister may have orchestrated this entire situation. She gets the wealthy older man without the complication of family drama, and Devon gets eliminated as a problem without her having to break up with him directly. I felt sick. But Devon thinks he's in love with her. Men in desperate financial situations often make poor emotional decisions, especially when someone offers them what feels like salvation. Marcus pulled out another folder. There's more. Your sister has been researching Nevada marriage laws and quick divorce procedures. She's also been looking into Whitmore's previous divorce settlement and custody arrangements with his ex-wife. She's planning to divorce Devon. Almost certainly, but not until after she's secured her relationship with Whitmore. Devon is useful to her right now because he provides cover and makes her look less calculating. But long-term, she's got bigger plans. I sat back in my chair trying to process the magnitude of what Cassandra had done. She hadn't just stolen my fiancé, she had manipulated him, used him, and set him up for financial and emotional ruin, all while pursuing a millionaire behind his back. There's one more thing, Marcus said carefully. The timing of your sister's involvement with Whitmore corresponds with several decisions that have hurt Devon's business. Permit delays, inspection problems, supply chain issues that seem unusually targeted. It's possible that Whitmore has been sabotaging Devon's contract to keep him desperate and dependent, making sure Devon couldn't afford to lose Cassandra's supposed support. Exactly. Keep the competition weak and distracted while pursuing your real objective. I thought about Devon at the rehearsal dinner, talking about following your heart and finding your soulmate. He had no idea he was just a pawn in Cassandra's much larger game. And while I was furious at him for betraying me, I was starting to see that he was as much a victim as I was. But that didn't change what he had put me through. It didn't change the humiliation or the pain or the fact that he had chosen to believe Cassandra's lies over trusting the woman he was supposed to marry. "What do you recommend?" I asked. Marcus leaned forward. "That depends what you want to accomplish. Do you want revenge against your sister? Do you want to save Devon from making the biggest mistake of his life? Or do you want to protect yourself and move on?" I looked at the photographs of Cassandra with Jonathan Whitmore, at the financial documents showing Devon's desperation, at the timeline that proved how carefully my sister had orchestrated the destruction of my life to serve her own ambitions. "I want justice," I said finally. "For me, for Devon, and for everyone else Cassandra is going to hurt if someone doesn't stop her." Marcus smiled for the first time since I had walked into his office. "Then we're going to need a plan, and we're going to need to move fast, because based on these documents, your sister is planning to file for divorce from Devon within the next 2 weeks, right after she secures an engagement from Whitmore." "How do you know that?" He pulled out a receipt from a high-end jewelry store. "She's been shopping for engagement rings. Expensive ones. And she's been using Whitmore's credit card to pay for them." I stared at the receipt, feeling something cold and sharp crystallize in my chest. Cassandra had stolen my wedding, destroyed my relationship, and humiliated me in front of everyone I cared about. But she had also made one crucial mistake. She underestimated me. And now I had proof of everything she thought she had hidden. The question was, what was I going to do with it? "Mr. Henley," I said, standing up and gathering the folders, "I think it's time my sister learned that actions have consequences, and I think Mr. Whitmore might be very interested to know what kind of woman he's been dating." "What did you have in mind?" I smiled, feeling something fierce and determined settling into place where heartbreak had been just hours before. "I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve. All of them." The war wasn't over. It was just beginning.
The first shot came Monday morning at 6:23 a.m. I was in my apartment, finally dealing with the aftermath of a canceled wedding, returning gifts, calling vendors, and trying to salvage what money I could from deposits. My phone rang, and I saw my mother's name on the screen. "Raven Elizabeth Mitchell, you need to stop this nonsense right now." I had been expecting this call. Mom's use of my full name meant I was in serious trouble, the kind that usually preceded lectures about family loyalty and forgiveness. "Good morning to you too, Mom." "Don't you dare take that tone with me. Your sister is devastated. She's been crying for 3 days straight because you won't return her calls." I almost laughed. "Cassandra is devastated? She stole my fiancé the night before my wedding, and she's devastated?" "She fell in love, Raven. These things happen. You can't control who your heart chooses." The family script was already being rewritten.
Cassandra wasn't a betrayer, she was a victim of uncontrollable passion. I was the unreasonable one for being upset about it. Mom, did she tell you how long she's been sleeping with Devon? There was a pause. That's not the point. The point is that you're tearing this family apart with your stubborn pride. We need to sit down and work this out like adults. Work what out? She destroyed my wedding. She humiliated me in front of everyone we know. What exactly is there to work out? Your sister made a mistake, but she's trying to make it right. She and Devon want to pay for the wedding expenses they caused. They want to help you through this transition. I could picture Cassandra feeding Mom this line, painting herself as the generous sister, trying to help poor, bitter Raven move on. The manipulation was so smooth, it was almost artistic. I don't want their money, I said. Then what do you want? To punish them forever? To hold a grudge until we're all old and gray? What I wanted was for Cassandra to face consequences for her actions. What I wanted was for my mother to be as angry about my pain as she was about my reaction to it. But I couldn't say that without revealing what I knew about Whitmore and Cassandra's real plans. I want space, I said finally. I want time to process this without being told how I should feel about it. Space, Mom's voice dripped disapproval. That's just another word for selfishness, Raven. Family means working through problems, not running away from them. After I hung up, I sat staring at the stack of wedding gifts that needed to be returned. Crystal vases, silver picture frames, expensive kitchen appliances that would never be used for the dinner parties Devon and I had planned to host. Each item represented someone's faith in our future together, someone's investment in a life that had been built on lies. My phone buzzed with a text from Cassandra. Mom told me about your conversation. I understand you're hurt, but this punishment campaign needs to stop. We need to talk. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Marcus Henley. Have you made contact with Jonathan Whitmore yet? I asked. Not directly, but I've been monitoring his activities in relationship with your sister. They had lunch yesterday at the Continental Club. Very public, very affectionate. She's definitely moved fast on securing that relationship. And Devon? Still believes he's in a passionate love affair with your sister. According to my sources, he's been taking out more loans to pay for their new life together. Engagement ring, apartment deposits, the works. He's in deeper debt than ever. It was exactly what I had expected. Devon was being used as a credit card while Cassandra built her real future with Whitmore. By Wednesday, the family pressure campaign escalated. My Aunt Linda called, my cousin Mark sent a long email about forgiveness, and my father showed up in my office during lunch. He sat across from me in the conference room I had borrowed from my boss, looking uncomfortable in his navy suit and red tie. Dad had always been the family mediator, the one who smoothed over conflicts and insisted we could all just get along if we tried hard enough. Your mother's worried about you, he began. I'm fine, Dad. I'm dealing with this. Are you? Because from where we're sitting, it looks like you're cutting off everyone who cares about you. I set down my sandwich and looked at him directly. Everyone who cares about me. Dad, Cassandra stole my fiancé at my rehearsal dinner in front of my entire family, and your concern is that I'm not being nice enough about it? His face softened slightly. I know what she did was wrong, sweetheart, but she's your sister, your only sister. Are you really going to throw away that relationship over a man? Over a man? Dad, this isn't about Devon. This is about Cassandra thinking she can take whatever she wants from me and face no consequences because we share DNA. She made a mistake. She made a choice. A calculated, deliberate choice that she executed over 3 weeks while lying to my face and helping me plan my wedding. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Look, I know you're angry. You have every right to be angry. But holding on to that anger is only going to hurt you in the long run. It was the same script Mom had used, the same script I had been hearing my entire life whenever Cassandra's actions caused problems. Focus on my reaction, not her behavior. Worry about my anger, not her cruelty. What if I told you that Cassandra didn't steal Devon because she loves him? I said carefully. What if I told you she's
using him. Dad frowned. What do you mean? I wanted to tell him everything about Whitmore, about the financial manipulation, about Cassandra's real plans, but I knew that without concrete proof he could see with his own eyes, he would dismiss it as jealous speculation. I mean that if you think this story has a happy ending for anyone involved, you're going to be disappointed. Raven, you can't just make accusations. I'm not making accusations. I'm making predictions. And in about 2 weeks, when everything falls apart exactly the way I think it will, I want you to remember this conversation. Dad looked confused and frustrated. Why are you being so cryptic? If you know something, just tell me. Because you wouldn't believe me if I told you. None of you would. You've already decided that Cassandra is the victim of uncontrollable love, and I'm the bitter ex-fiancé who can't let go. That's not... Dad, in the past 3 days, you, Mom, Aunt Linda, and Cousin Mark have all called me to tell me I need to get over this, forgive Cassandra, and stop making things difficult for the family. Not one of you has asked how I'm doing. Not one of you has acknowledged that what she did was unforgivable. You're all more concerned about protecting her from the consequences of her actions than you are about the fact that she destroyed my life. Dad was quiet for a long moment. We're worried about both of you. No, you're not. You're worried about the family image. You're worried about having to take sides. You're worried about holiday dinners being awkward. But you're not worried about me. That's not fair, isn't it? If some stranger had done this to me, stolen my fiancé, ruined my wedding, humiliated me publicly, you'd be furious on my behalf. You'd support any decision I made to cut that person out of my life. But because it's Cassandra, suddenly I'm supposed to be the bigger person? Dad stood up, straightening his tie. I came here hoping we could find a way to move forward as a family. We can. As soon as Cassandra faces real consequences for her actions and makes real amends for the damage she's caused. What kind of consequences? What would satisfy you? It was a trap question. If I said nothing would satisfy me, I was unreasonable. If I made specific demands, I was vindictive. There was no right answer that would let me keep my anger and my family at the same time. I want her to tell the truth, I said finally, the whole truth, about how long this was planned, about what she really wants, about who she's really with. Dad looked puzzled. She's with Devon. They eloped. Did they? Have you seen a marriage certificate? Have they moved in together? Are they wearing wedding rings? I assumed. You assumed. Just like you assumed Cassandra was being honest about her feelings. Just like you assumed Devon was the victim of overwhelming passion instead of overwhelming debt. Raven, what are you talking about? Ask her, Dad. Ask Cassandra to show you the marriage certificate. Ask her where they're living. Ask her what their plans are for the future. And then ask yourself why she can't give you straight answers. I stood up and gathered my things. When you're ready to hear the truth about what your daughter really did, call me. Until then, I don't have anything else to say. Dad followed me to the door. Sweetheart, I think you're letting your hurt cloud your judgment. Sometimes the simple explanation is the right one. I turned back to him. Dad, I've known Cassandra for 26 years. When has she ever chosen the simple explanation over the complicated one that gets her what she wants? He didn't have an answer for that. That night, I got a call from Devon. It was the first time we had spoken since the rehearsal dinner, and his voice sounded strained and exhausted. Raven, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to call. I wanted to apologize for how everything happened. Okay, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I handled it badly. The timing, the location, all of it. You deserved better than finding out that way. Yes, I did. I never meant to hurt you. I hope you know that. I could have told him right then about Whitmore, about Cassandra's real plans, about how he was being used, but I realized that he wouldn't believe me either. He was as invested in the fantasy of his passionate love affair as my family was invested in the fantasy of Cassandra's romantic mistake. Devon, I said softly, I hope you get everything you think you're getting out of this. There was a pause. What does that mean?
It means I hope your new life works out exactly the way you expect it to. Are you okay? Your family's worried that you're taking this too hard. My family's worried about the wrong things. But don't worry about me, Devon. Worry about yourself. After I hung up, I realized that none of them would understand until they saw the truth with their own eyes. They were all too invested in their own versions of the story to accept information that contradicted what they wanted to believe.
But that was fine, because in about a week, Cassandra's carefully constructed lies were going to collapse on their own. And when they did, I would be there to pick up the pieces. Not to rescue her, but to make sure everyone understood exactly what had really happened. The pushback was predictable, but it was also temporary. Soon enough, the truth would speak for itself. I made my decision on Thursday morning while sitting in my car outside Grandview Manor, staring at the venue where I should have been married 5 days earlier. The grounds crew was setting up for someone else's wedding, white chairs being arranged on the same lawn where mine had been canceled, flowers being positioned around the same arch where I had planned to say vows that would never be spoken. For 5 days, I had been reactive, fielding calls from family members, listening to lectures about forgiveness, watching everyone around me rewrite history to make Cassandra's betrayal seem like an unfortunate accident instead of a calculated attack. I had been letting other people control the narrative while I sat quietly in my grief and anger. But sitting there watching another bride's dream being assembled in the space where mine had been destroyed, I realized I was done being the victim in this story. It was time to take control. I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram. I had 847 followers, mostly college friends, work colleagues, and family members. Not a huge platform, but big enough for what I needed to do. I crafted a post carefully, choosing my words with the precision I use for my most important marketing campaigns. 5 days ago, I was supposed to marry the love of my life. Instead, I discovered at my own rehearsal dinner that he had been having an affair with my sister for 3 weeks, and they had decided to elope that night. I've spent the past 5 days being told by family members that I need to get over it and stop being dramatic because these things happen. Well, these things don't just happen. They're choices. And I choose to tell the truth about what happened to me. I attached a photo from the rehearsal dinner. One that Thea had taken on her phone showing Devon and Cassandra at the head table, his arm around her while empty chairs marked the places where other family members had walked out in disgust. My empty chair was visible in the foreground, place cards still sitting on an unused plate. Then, I tagged everyone. My family members, Devon's family, our mutual friends, even some of the wedding vendors who had been asking questions about payment and cancellation. I wanted everyone who had been whispering behind closed doors to see the truth laid out publicly. I hit publish and drove to work. By lunch, the post had 127 likes and 43 comments. Most were supportive, friends expressing shock and outrage, colleagues offering encouragement, even a few acquaintances sharing their own stories of family betrayal. But there were also comments from my family members that revealed exactly how they intended to handle this public revelation. My Aunt Linda: "Raven, this is hurtful and unnecessary. Family business should stay in the family." My cousin Mark: "There are always two sides to every story. Maybe focus on healing instead of blame." My mother: "I'm disappointed in you for airing our private matters this way. Please take this down." But the comment that made my blood boil came from Cassandra herself. "I'm sorry you're in so much pain, sister. I hope someday you can find it in your heart to forgive us for falling in love. Devon and I never meant to hurt you." Even in public, even when confronted with photographic evidence of her betrayal, she was still playing the victim, still positioning herself as someone who had been swept away by uncontrollable passion rather than someone who had orchestrated a cruel deception. That's when I realized one post wasn't going to be enough. I spent my lunch break creating a more detailed account. This time, I included screenshots of text messages Cassandra had sent me while she was secretly sleeping with Devon. Messages where she complained about him being too clingy and asked for my advice on letting guys down easy. Messages where she helped me plan romantic surprises for him while she was actively sabotaging our relationship. For anyone wondering if this was really just a case of uncontrollable love, here are some text messages my sister sent me while she was having an affair with my fiancé.
Notice how she was asking me for advice on breaking up with guys at the same time she was supposedly falling in love with mine. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The post was shared by friends, then by their friends, then by complete strangers who found the story through the viral nature of social media outrage. By 3 p.m., I had gained 200 new followers. By 5 p.m., it was 500. By the time I went to bed, over 1,000 people were following my account, and the story was being discussed on local Facebook groups and neighborhood forums. But more importantly, people were reaching out with information. A woman named Sarah Chen messaged me. "I saw your story, and I think I know your sister. Is she tall with auburn hair? Because I've seen her at the Continental Club multiple times with an older man, not the guy from your wedding photos."
Another message came from someone named Jennifer Walsh. "I work at Meridian Restaurant. I was working your rehearsal dinner. I want you to know that most of the staff were disgusted by what happened to you. But also, your sister left her credit card behind that night. The name on it wasn't hers. It was Jonathan Whitmore." My phone was buzzing constantly with messages, comments, and notifications. The story was spreading beyond my immediate circle and taking on a life of its own. People were invested now, emotionally connected to the narrative, and they wanted justice on my behalf. On Friday morning, I woke up to a voicemail from a reporter named Amanda Torres from Channel 7 News. "Hi, Miss Mitchell. This is Amanda Torres from Channel 7. We've been following your story on social media, and we'd love to interview you about family betrayal and public accountability. Your story has really struck a nerve with our viewers. Please call me back when you get a chance." That's when I knew the story had moved beyond social media and into the mainstream. I called Marcus Henley immediately. "The story's gone public," I told him. "Are we ready for the next phase?" "More than ready. In fact, the publicity might work in our favor. I've been approached by several people who have information about Jonathan Whitmore's business practices and his relationship with your sister. Apparently, when people get invested in a story like yours, they start sharing what they know." "What kind of information?" "The kind that suggests your sister isn't the only person Whitmore has been involved with while maintaining other relationships, and the kind that suggests his business dealings aren't as clean as they appear." Over the weekend, the story continued to grow. Local influencers shared it, mom bloggers wrote about it, and it even got picked up by a popular podcast about family drama. Each share brought more followers, more comments, and more information from people who had connected dots I hadn't even known existed. But the most important development came Sunday evening, when I received a message from someone I hadn't expected to hear from. "Miss Mitchell, this is Patricia Whitmore, Jonathan's ex-wife. I've been following your story, and I think we need to talk. Your sister isn't the first young woman Jonathan has pursued while maintaining other commitments, and she won't be the last unless someone stops him. I have information that might help you understand what you're really dealing with." I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. Patricia Whitmore could provide insight into Jonathan's patterns, his tactics, and, most importantly, his vulnerabilities. If Cassandra thought she was playing a sophisticated game of manipulation, she had no idea how outclassed she really was. "I'd be very interested in talking," I wrote back. "When and where?" "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Cafe Luna on 5th Street. And, Miss Mitchell, bring your private investigator if you have one. What I'm going to tell you is going to require evidence to back it up." By Monday morning, my Instagram following had reached 5,000 people. The local news segment was scheduled to air Tuesday evening. I had received interview requests from 3 podcasts and a women's magazine. But most importantly, I had allies now, people who were as invested in seeing justice done as I was. The story had moved beyond my personal grievance and become something larger, a symbol of standing up to people who think they can manipulate others without consequences, a rallying cry for anyone who had ever been betrayed by someone they trusted. When I walked into work Monday morning, my boss pulled me aside. "Raven, I've been following your situation on social media. I want you to know that the company supports you completely. If you need time off for interviews or legal proceedings, just let me know." Even professionally, the story was working in my favor. Instead of being seen as a victim of personal drama, I was being viewed as someone who had taken control of a bad situation and turned it into a platform for truth and accountability.
But the real test would come that afternoon when I met with Patricia Whitmore, because if I was right about Cassandra's real motivations and Jonathan's true character, the information Patricia could provide would turn this from a story about stolen love into something much more serious. And if I was wrong, well, at least I would have stood up for myself publicly and shown everyone that actions have consequences. But as I sat in my office reviewing the evidence Marcus had compiled and preparing for the most important meeting of this entire ordeal, I had a feeling I wasn't wrong about anything. Cassandra had picked the wrong sister to betray, and Jonathan Whitmore had picked the wrong family to manipulate. They were both about to learn that some people fight back. The first sign that Cassandra and her allies were done playing defense came Tuesday morning at 7:43 a.m. I was getting dressed for my meeting with Patricia Whitmore when my phone rang. It was my office number, which was strange since I was obviously not at work yet. "Raven Mitchell's office, this is Janet," my assistant answered when I called back. "Janet, it's Raven. Someone just called me from my office line." "Oh, thank God you called. Raven, there are reporters here, like 3 different news crews. They're saying someone contacted them with information that contradicts your story about your sister and fiancé." My stomach dropped. "What kind of information?" "I don't know, but they're asking about financial records, business dealings, and whether you hired someone to investigate your own family. Security is trying to get them to leave, but they say they have a right to ask questions about a public story." I could hear my family's fingerprints all over this. The timing was too convenient, the information too specific. Someone had decided that if I was going to make this public, they were going to control the narrative by making me look like the unstable, vindictive ex-fiancé who was manufacturing drama for attention. "Janet, don't talk to any of them. Refer all questions to my personal attorney." I gave her Marcus Henley's number, knowing he would handle media inquiries properly. "And can you clear my calendar for the rest of the week? I have a feeling things are about to get very complicated." By the time I arrived at Cafe Luna, I had missed calls from 4 reporters, 6 unknown numbers, and a text from my mother that made my blood run cold. "You forced our hand, Raven. We tried to handle this privately, but since you want to air family business publicly, the whole truth is going to come out." Patricia Whitmore was exactly what I had expected. Elegant in an understated way, with silver hair and a perfect bob, and the kind of quiet confidence that came from surviving a very public, very expensive divorce. She was sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee already ordered and a manila envelope beside her purse. "Miss Mitchell," she said, standing to shake my hand, "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances, but I'm glad you were willing to see me." "Miss Whitmore, I appreciate you reaching out. I have to admit, I'm curious about what you think I need to know about my sister's relationship with your ex-husband." She smiled grimly. "First, please call me Patricia. And second, your sister doesn't have a relationship with Jonathan. She has a job." I sat down slowly. "What do you mean?" "Jonathan has used the same pattern for 15 years. He identifies young women who are in difficult family situations or financial stress, offers them what appears to be a romantic relationship, and uses them to accomplish business objectives that he can't pursue directly because of legal or ethical constraints." She opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of photographs. "These are from Jonathan's relationships over the past decade. Different women, different cities, but always the same pattern." The photos showed Jonathan with various young women at upscale restaurants, charity events, and business functions. Each woman was beautiful, well-dressed, and significantly younger than him. But what struck me was how similar they all looked to Cassandra. Tall, auburn-haired, with the kind of striking features that photographed well. "He has a type," I said. "More than that. He has a business model." Each of these women was connected to someone Jonathan needed to manipulate or eliminate as competition.
The woman in Denver was engaged to a city planning commissioner who was blocking one of Jonathan's development projects. The woman in Phoenix was the daughter of a contractor who was bidding against Jonathan for a major hotel renovation. My hands were shaking as I flipped through the photos. And Cassandra? Your sister's relationship with your fiancé gave Jonathan access to information about Devon's construction business, his financial vulnerabilities, and his upcoming contract. More importantly, it gave him a way to sabotage that contract without leaving fingerprints. The permit delays, the inspection problems, all traceable to information that only someone close to Devon would have known. Project timelines, supplier relationships, cash flow projections. Your sister has been feeding Jonathan intelligence for weeks. Patricia pulled out another document. But here's what makes this situation different from the others. In every previous case, Jonathan's target eventually figured out what was happening and backed away. Your fiancé hasn't. He's doubled down on his relationship with your sister, which means he's become a liability instead of just a competitor. What kind of liability? The kind that knows too much about how Jonathan does business. Devon has seen financial records, heard phone conversations, and met people who could connect Jonathan to some very questionable practices. As long as Devon thought he was just dating Jonathan's girlfriend's sister, that was manageable. But now that he thinks he's married to her and believes they have a future together, he's expecting transparency that Jonathan cannot provide. I felt sick. So Jonathan needs to get rid of Devon permanently? Exactly. And your sister's job is to make that happen in a way that doesn't create suspicion or legal problems for Jonathan. How? Patricia's expression darkened. The same way it happened in Phoenix. The contractor there was found dead in his hotel room 3 days before the contract was awarded. Apparent suicide brought on by financial stress and relationship problems. The coffee cup slipped from my hands and shattered on the floor. Other cafe patrons looked over, but Patricia continued speaking in the same calm, measured tone. Your sister has been researching Devon's mental health history, his financial pressures, and his access to potentially dangerous equipment at construction sites. She's also been documenting what she calls his erratic behavior and depression over losing you. She's setting up a narrative for his suicide, while positioning herself as the grieving widow who tried to save him but couldn't overcome his demons. It's actually quite sophisticated, which is why I don't think your sister came up with it herself. I grabbed Patricia's arm. We have to warn Devon. With what evidence? Everything I've shown you is circumstantial, and your ex-fiancé is not exactly likely to believe warnings from the women he publicly humiliated.
She was right. Devon would dismiss anything I told him as jealous revenge. My family would claim I was having a breakdown. Even the police would need concrete evidence before they could take action against someone as powerful as Jonathan Whitmore? What happened to the other women? I asked. The ones in the photos? Most of them disappeared after their jobs were completed. New identities, new cities, generous financial settlements in exchange for their silence. But the woman in Phoenix, Patricia's voice trailed off. What happened to her? She tried to back out, told Jonathan she couldn't go through with destroying someone's life. 3 weeks later, she was found dead in her apartment. Another apparent suicide brought on by guilt over her fiancé's death. I was going to be sick. How do you know all this? Because I hired private investigators during my divorce who uncovered Jonathan's entire operation, but I couldn't use the information in court because most of it was obtained through illegal surveillance. All I could do was take my settlement and hope someone else would eventually be able to stop him. Why didn't you go to the police? I tried, but Jonathan has connections everywhere. Judges, prosecutors, police commissioners. My evidence was deemed inadmissible, and suddenly my investigators faced legal problems that made them back away from the case. Patricia reached across the table and took my hands. Raven, your sister is in much more danger than your ex-fiancé. Once she's served her purpose, Jonathan will eliminate her too.
These aren't romantic relationships. They're business arrangements with expiration dates. But she thinks she's going to marry him. They all did, right up until they became inconvenient. I sat back in my chair trying to process the magnitude of what Patricia was telling me. My sister wasn't just a manipulative woman who had stolen my fiancé. She was an accomplice to a pattern of manipulation that had already resulted in at least 2 deaths, and she was probably next on the list of victims. What do you think I should do? Patricia pulled out a business card. There's an FBI agent named David Torres who has been building a case against Jonathan for years. He can't move without solid evidence, but if someone were to provide him with documentation of his current activities, someone like a private investigator who has been monitoring the situation legally? Exactly. Agent Torres is particularly interested in any evidence of financial manipulation, coercion, or conspiracy to commit fraud or violence. I took the card, feeling something shift in my chest. This wasn't just about my ruined wedding anymore. This wasn't even just about getting revenge on Cassandra and Devon. This was about stopping a predator who had been destroying lives for years. Patricia, if I do this, if I give the FBI everything I have, what happens to my sister? If she cooperates with the investigation and testifies against Jonathan, she might avoid prison time. If she doesn't, she shrugged. Accessory to murder charges tend to carry significant sentences. I thought about Cassandra's smug smile at the rehearsal dinner, her text messages positioning herself as the victim of uncontrollable love, her family's campaign to pressure me into silence. None of them had any idea what they were really dealing with. There's something else you should know, Patricia said, gathering her papers. The news crews at your office this morning? Jonathan arranged that. He's trying to discredit you before you can cause problems for his current operation. How do you know? Because he did the same thing to me when I started asking questions during our divorce. Suddenly, I was the unstable ex-wife making wild accusations to get attention. I smiled for the first time since sitting down. Then he doesn't know me very well. I don't back down from fights, especially when I have evidence. Patricia smiled back. That's exactly what Agent Torres is hoping to hear. As I walked to my car, I called Marcus Henley. We need to meet with the FBI today. And Marcus, bring everything. Financial records, surveillance photos, communication logs, all of it. What's the urgency? Because we're not just dealing with adultery and family drama anymore. We're dealing with a serial killer, and my sister is about to become his next victim. Unless I could stop him first. The FBI field office in downtown Millbrook looked exactly like every government building I had ever been in. Fluorescent lights, beige walls, and the kind of institutional furniture that suggested efficiency over comfort. Agent David Torres was not what I had expected. Instead of the grizzled veteran I had pictured, he was probably in his early 40s, with kind eyes and the sort of methodical demeanor that made you feel like he actually listened when you spoke. Marcus Henley and I sat across from him in a conference room lined with whiteboards covered with photos, timelines, and red string connecting various pieces of evidence. Some of the faces I recognized from Patricia's photos. Others were new, but they all shared the same tragic end to their stories. Mrs. Whitmore has been trying to get someone to listen to her about her ex-husband for 3 years. The problem has always been evidence that would hold up in federal court. Everything we had was circumstantial or obtained through methods that defense attorneys could easily challenge. But now you have real-time documentation of his current activities, I said.
Exactly. Your private investigator's work has been thorough and, more importantly, completely legal. Phone records, financial transactions, surveillance photos taken in public spaces, all admissible. He spread out several photographs of Cassandra with Jonathan at various restaurants and hotels. What we need now is someone on the inside who can provide direct evidence of coercion, conspiracy, or planning of criminal activity. Someone like my sister, I said. Someone like your sister. The question is whether she's a willing participant or another victim. Marcus leaned forward. Based on our surveillance, she seems to believe she's in control of the situation. She's been researching divorce laws, asset protection, and Jonathan's previous marriage settlement. She thinks she's playing a long game to secure his wealth. Agent Torres nodded. That's consistent with how he recruits. He makes them feel like they're the ones manipulating him, when really they're following a script he's written dozens of times before. So what's the plan? I asked. We need to approach your sister directly, not to arrest her, but to offer her a choice. Cooperate with our investigation and help us document Jonathan's activities, or face charges as an accessory to everything he's planning. She'll never believe me if I'm the one who approaches her. She thinks I'm just a bitter ex-fiancé trying to ruin her happiness. That's why you won't be alone. Agent Torres stood up and walked to the door. There's someone I'd like you to meet. The woman who walked into the conference room was stunning in the same way Cassandra was. Tall, auburn hair, green eyes. But there was something haunted in her expression that my sister had never possessed, a wariness that suggested hard-earned wisdom. This is Rebecca Morgan, Agent Torres said. She was Jonathan's Denver operation 2 years ago. Rebecca sat down and looked directly at me. Your sister contacted me yesterday. My mouth fell open. What? She found my social media through some mutual connections and sent me a message asking if we wanted to compare notes about Jonathan Whitmore. She seems to think we're both part of some kind of sisterhood of women who have dated wealthy older men. Agent Torres pulled out a printout of text messages. Rebecca has been working with us for the past year, trying to document Jonathan's pattern of behavior. When your sister reached out, it created an opportunity we haven't had before. I read through the messages. Cassandra's tone was chatty, almost gossipy, as she asked Rebecca about Jonathan's preferences, his business associates, and his relationship history. She was fishing for information, but she was also revealing details about her own situation that she probably shouldn't have been sharing. She told me about your ex-fiancé's construction business. She seems to think Jonathan is going to help Devon get back on his feet financially as a wedding gift to her. She has no idea that Devon is being set up for elimination. Does she know about the other women, the ones who died? Rebecca shook her head. Jonathan is very careful about information management. Each woman only knows what she needs to know for her specific role. I didn't learn about the deaths until after I was already out and working with the FBI. Agent Torres sat back down. Rebecca's testimony is what allowed us to open the federal investigation, but we need evidence of active conspiracy to make charges stick. Your sister could provide that evidence, but only if she understands what she's really involved in. And if she doesn't cooperate, then she becomes a defendant instead of a witness. I thought about Cassandra at the rehearsal dinner, so confident and triumphant, about her text messages positioning herself as the victim of uncontrollable love, about my family's campaign to pressure me into silence. None of them understood that they were dealing with something far more dangerous than adultery and hurt feelings. When do we approach her? Rebecca pulled out her phone. She's expecting to meet me for coffee tomorrow afternoon. She thinks we're going to bond over our shared experience of dating Jonathan. Instead, we're going to show her the truth about what he really does to women like us. What if she doesn't believe us? What if she thinks we're lying to ruin her relationship?
Then we show her the evidence, the photographs of other women, the police reports, the death certificates. Agent Torres gathered the files spread across the table. We show her Rebecca's scars and Patricia Whitmore's divorce records. We show her exactly what Jonathan Whitmore is capable of when women become inconvenient. I felt a cold certainty settle in my chest. She's going to be devastated. She's going to be alive, Rebecca said firmly, which is more than I can say about the women who came before her and didn't get warned in time. Agent Torres stood up. I want to be clear about what we're asking you to do. This isn't just about saving your sister or getting revenge on the people who hurt you. We're asking you to help us build a case against a man who has been murdering people for years. That comes with risks. What kind of risks? Jonathan has resources and connections that make him very dangerous when he feels threatened. If he realizes that you're working with us, he won't hesitate to eliminate the threat. You mean he'll try to kill me too? It's a possibility we have to consider. I thought about Devon, oblivious to the fact that he was being set up for murder,
about Cassandra, so proud of her sophisticated manipulation, when she was really just another victim in Jonathan's long line of casualties. About all the other women whose photos were pinned to the whiteboards around us, women who had trusted the wrong person and paid for it with their lives. Agent Torres, if we don't stop him now, how many more people will he kill? Based on his pattern of operations, probably at least 2 more in the next month. Your ex-fiancé first, then your sister once she's served her purpose. Then we stop him. I stood up and shook Rebecca's hand. What time is coffee tomorrow? Rebecca smiled, the first genuine smile I had seen from her since she walked into the room. 2 o'clock at Meridian Cafe, the same place where your sister destroyed your rehearsal dinner. Fitting, I said. As we left the FBI office, Marcus pulled me aside. Raven, are you sure about this? Once you cross this line, there's no going back to your normal life. You'll be a federal witness in a major criminal case. I looked back at the building where Agent Torres and his team were working to stop a serial killer who had been operating freely for years, protected by money and connections, and the tendency of people to look the other way when wealthy men did terrible things. Marcus, my normal life ended when Cassandra stole my fiancé. Everything since then has been about figuring out who I really am when the people I trusted show me who they really are. I got into my car. Tomorrow, I find out if my sister is a victim or a monster. Either way, Jonathan Whitmore's reign of terror ends. And if Cassandra chooses not to cooperate, I started the engine. Then she faces the consequences of her choices, just like everyone else. But as I drove home, I found myself hoping that somewhere underneath all her manipulation and cruelty, there was still enough of the sister I used to know to choose saving lives over protecting the lie she had built her future on. Because tomorrow she would learn that some games have stakes higher than money or pride. Some games are literally life and death. I arrived at Meridian Cafe 30 minutes early, choosing the same corner booth where I had sat with Patricia Whitmore just 2 days earlier. The irony of meeting Cassandra at the restaurant where she had destroyed my rehearsal dinner wasn't lost on me, but it felt appropriate. This was where her lies had started to unravel, and this was where they would completely fall apart. Rebecca arrived 15 minutes before our scheduled meeting time, looking nervous but determined. She carried a leather portfolio that I knew contained photographs, documents, and evidence that would shatter whatever fantasy Cassandra had built about her relationship with Jonathan. Has she arrived yet? Rebecca asked, sliding into the seat across from me. Not yet, but she's always exactly on time. She'll be here at 2 o'clock. I checked my phone for any last-minute messages from Agent Torres or Marcus Henley. Are you sure you're ready for this? I've been ready for 2 years. This is my chance to make sure Jonathan doesn't destroy anyone else's life the way he destroyed mine. At exactly 2 p.m., Cassandra walked through the cafe door. She looked radiant, confident, wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater and designer jeans that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and she carried herself with the kind of casual elegance that had always made people stop and stare. She spotted our table immediately and walked over with a bright smile, completely unaware that she was walking into an ambush that would change her life forever. "Rebecca," she said warmly, extending her hand. "It's wonderful to finally meet you in person. And Raven, I wasn't expecting to see you here." "Sit down, Cassandra," I said quietly. "We need to talk." She hesitated, some instinct warning her that this wasn't the casual coffee date she had expected. But her curiosity won out over her caution, and she sat down at the end of the booth where she could see both Rebecca and me. "This feels very serious," she said, her tone light but her eyes watchful. "Did I miss something?"
Rebecca leaned forward. "Cassandra, when you messaged me about Jonathan, you said you wanted to compare notes about dating him. I think there are some things you need to know about the man you think you're going to marry." "What kind of things?" Cassandra's voice had developed an edge. "Because if this is some kind of intervention organized by my bitter sister, I'm not interested." "This isn't about me," I said. "This is about the fact that you're in danger and you don't even know it." Cassandra laughed, but it sounded forced. "Danger? From Jonathan? He's the most successful businessman in the state. He's powerful, wealthy, connected." He's a serial killer, Rebecca said quietly. The words hung in the air between us like a bomb that had just been detonated. Cassandra's face went white, then flushed red with anger. That's insane. You're both insane if you think I'm going to believe something like that. Rebecca opened her portfolio and pulled out a photograph. It showed her in a hospital bed, bandages covering most of her face and arms, machines monitoring her vital signs. This is what I looked like after Jonathan tried to have me killed 2 years ago. The car accident that was supposed to eliminate me before I could testify about what he had done to Marcus Rivera, a contractor in Denver who was competing with Jonathan for a major hotel renovation project. Cassandra stared at the photograph but didn't touch it. That could be from anything. A real accident, a medical condition. Rebecca pulled out another document. This is Marcus Rivera's death certificate. Apparent suicide, brought on by financial stress and relationship problems, just like what's being planned for Devon. That's ridiculous. Jonathan is trying to help Devon. He's going to invest in his construction company. I leaned forward. Cassandra, Jonathan has been sabotaging Devon's contracts for months. The permit delays, the inspection problems, the supply chain issues, all of that was orchestrated to keep Devon desperate and financially vulnerable. You're lying. Am I? When was the last time Jonathan actually gave Devon money? When was the last time any of his help actually improved Devon's situation instead of making it worse? Cassandra was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her mind working through the timeline, connecting dots she had refused to see before. Rebecca pulled out more photographs. These are Jonathan's other girlfriends over the past 10 years. Denver, Phoenix, Atlanta, Seattle. Different women, different targets, but always the same pattern. Cassandra flipped through the photos, her face growing paler with each image. They all look like me. Auburn hair, green eyes, tall, beautiful. Jonathan has very specific preferences because he's learned what works best for his business model. Business model? You're not his girlfriend, Cassandra. You're his employee. Your job is to eliminate Devon Sterling as competition for the Riverside District Development Project. Once that's accomplished, you'll be eliminated too. Cassandra slammed the photographs down on the table. This is all speculation, conspiracy theories. You have no proof that Jonathan has ever hurt anyone. Rebecca rolled up her sleeve, revealing the long scar I had seen at the FBI office. Then she pulled up her shirt slightly, showing a network of surgical scars across her abdomen. 3 broken ribs, punctured lung, internal bleeding, traumatic brain injury. The doctor said I was lucky to survive. The police said it was a tragic accident. Single car crash on a remote mountain road, driver fell asleep at the wheel. But I was awake, Cassandra. I was awake when the other car forced me off the road. Even if that's true, Cassandra said desperately, it doesn't mean Jonathan was involved. You could have had enemies, business problems. I was 24 years old and working as a yoga instructor. What enemies could I possibly have had? Rebecca's voice was getting stronger, more confident. The only person who wanted me dead was the man who had convinced me I was part of his romantic future, when really, I was just a tool for destroying Marcus Rivera. I could see Cassandra wavering, her certainty cracking under the weight of evidence she couldn't dismiss. There's something else, I said. Agent Torres from the FBI wants to meet with you. They've been building a case against Jonathan for 3 years, and your cooperation could be the final piece they need to arrest him. The FBI? Cassandra's voice was barely above a whisper. They know about your research into Devon's mental health history. They know about the narrative you've been building around his depression and erratic behavior. They know you've been documenting his access to dangerous equipment at construction sites. Cassandra's hand flew to her mouth. How could they possibly know that? Because they've been watching Jonathan for years. Every phone call, every email, every meeting. They know about your apartment together, your joint bank accounts, your plans to file for divorce in Nevada after he proposes. That's not... We never talked about divorce. Rebecca leaned forward. Cassandra, did Jonathan give you a script for how to handle Devon's emotional instability? Did he suggest ways to document his behavior that would support a narrative of suicide risk? Cassandra was trembling now. He said that Devon was fragile and I needed to be careful about how I handled the transition. He said I should keep notes in case Devon ever tried to hurt himself or blame us for his problems.
Those notes are evidence of premeditation in a murder case, I said. Unless you cooperate with the FBI, you're going to be charged as an accessory to conspiracy to commit murder. The cafe around us continued its normal afternoon rhythm. Customers ordering coffee, conversations about work and relationships, the mundane business of daily life. But at our table, my sister was learning that the sophisticated game she thought she was playing was actually a death sentence she had been writing for both herself and the man she had stolen from me. "I need to call Jonathan," she said suddenly, reaching for her phone. Rebecca grabbed her wrist. "If you call him now, if you give him any warning that his operation has been exposed, he will kill you today. Not next week, not next month, today." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do, because he tried to kill me the day after I confronted him about what he was really doing. The only reason I'm alive is because the FBI had already started monitoring his activities, and they intercepted the hit order." Cassandra stared at her phone, then slowly put it back in her purse. What do they want me to do? Wear a wire? Document his plans for Devon? Get him to admit on tape that he's orchestrated everything that's happened to Devon's business? Help them prove that this isn't just business competition, it's conspiracy to commit murder. And if I do that, you get immunity from prosecution and witness protection if needed. You get to live. And if I don't? I looked at my sister, this woman who had destroyed my wedding and broken my heart, who had betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. But she was still my sister, and she was as much a victim of Jonathan Whitmore's manipulation as anyone else. "If you don't cooperate, you'll be arrested as an accessory to murder, and Jonathan will probably have you killed before you can testify anyway." Cassandra buried her face in her hands. "I thought I was so smart. I thought I was playing him, getting him to fall in love with me so I could secure my future." "That's exactly what he wanted you to think. He's very good at making his victims feel like they're in control." "What about Devon? If I do this, if I help the FBI, what happens to him?" "He lives," I said simply. "He'll probably lose his business and face bankruptcy, but he'll be alive to rebuild." Cassandra looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Raven, I'm so sorry. I thought I was upgrading to a better life. I had no idea." "I know, but we can talk about apologies later. Right now we need to focus on keeping you both alive." She nodded slowly. "What do I need to do?" Rebecca pulled out a business card. "Agent Torres is waiting for your call. The wire setup happens tonight, and tomorrow you have one last dinner with Jonathan where you get him to tell you exactly what he has planned for Devon. And then Jonathan Whitmore finally faces justice for everything he's done." As we left the cafe, I realized that this wasn't just about my sister's redemption or Devon's survival. This was about stopping a predator who had been destroying lives for years, protected by wealth and power, and society's willingness to look the other way when rich men did terrible things. Tomorrow, that protection would end, and all the women Jonathan had killed, all the families he had destroyed, would finally get the justice they deserved. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of the Millbrook Federal Courthouse, watching Jonathan Whitmore being led away in handcuffs. The man who had seemed so powerful and untouchable just a half a year ago looked smaller now, diminished by orange prison clothing and the weight of a guilty verdict on charges including conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, and fraud. The jury had deliberated for only 4 hours. Cassandra sat in the front row of the courtroom gallery, no longer the confident, radiant woman who had stolen my fiancé at the rehearsal dinner. The past 6 months had changed her fundamentally. Working undercover for the FBI, wearing a wire to dinners with Jonathan, documenting his plans to eliminate Devon. It had stripped away all her illusions about manipulation and power games. She had learned the difference between thinking you're playing someone and actually being played. The recording she had made of Jonathan casually discussing the Devon problem and how accidents could be arranged at construction sites had been the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. His voice, captured clearly on FBI equipment, describing how Devon's suicide would need to look authentic and how Cassandra's grief would make her a sympathetic witness, had made the jury visibly uncomfortable. He had tried to apologize to me several times during the trial proceedings. Each attempt had been awkward and inadequate, full of explanations about how he had been confused and under pressure and hadn't realized what was really happening. I had accepted his apologies with the kind of polite distance you might show to an acquaintance who had disappointed you, because that's essentially what he had become. Someone I used to know who had made poor choices that nearly got him killed. The forgiveness my family had demanded 6 months ago seemed irrelevant now. This wasn't about romantic betrayal anymore. This was about justice for everyone Jonathan Whitmore had victimized over the years. My phone buzzed with notifications as news outlets picked up the verdict. The story that had started as a viral social media post about wedding betrayal had evolved into a federal criminal case that exposed corruption, murder, and a network of accomplices spanning multiple states. The woman who had once been humiliated at her own rehearsal dinner was now being hailed as the whistleblower who brought down a serial killer. The irony wasn't lost on me. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered around the steps, hoping for statements from the key witnesses. Agent Torres held a brief press conference, praising the courage of the women who had come forward and emphasizing that Jonathan's conviction sent a message that wealth and power couldn't protect people from the consequences of their crimes. Cassandra appeared beside me as I watched the media circus from a safe distance. "Strange how different this feels from that night at Meridian Restaurant," she said quietly. I looked at my sister. Really looked at her for the first time in months. The designer clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a sweater that looked like it had come from a regular department store. Her hair was shorter, less styled, more natural. But the biggest change was in her eyes. The calculating confidence that had once defined her had been replaced by something harder to read. Wisdom, maybe, or just the wariness that comes from learning how naive you really were. I asked if she regretted it. Helping the FBI, I mean. Giving up whatever future you thought you had with Jonathan. She was quiet for a long moment. "I regret that I was stupid enough to think I could manipulate someone like him. I regret that I was so focused on what I thought I deserved that I couldn't see I was being used. But helping stop him? No, I don't regret that. What are you going to do now?" Agent Torres helped me get a job with a nonprofit that helps victims of financial fraud. Apparently, having first-hand experience with sophisticated manipulation makes me useful in identifying warning signs. She smiled ruefully. Who knew that being a reformed con artist could be a marketable skill? It was the first real conversation we had since the day at Meridian Cafe when her world had collapsed. For months, our interactions had been limited to trial preparation, FBI debriefings, and the careful coordination required when 2 key witnesses in a federal case happened to be sisters who had been estranged. "Mom wants us to have dinner together," Cassandra said. "Dinner, like we used to when we were kids. She thinks now that the trial is over, we can move past all this unpleasantness and go back to being sisters." I almost laughed. Our mother's ability to minimize catastrophic events as mere unpleasantness had always been remarkable, but calling a federal murder conspiracy unpleasant set a new record even for her. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that being sisters doesn't erase the fact that I almost got you killed. That if Jonathan had realized you were investigating him before the FBI was ready to move, he would have eliminated you as a threat." Cassandra's voice was steady, but I could hear the guilt underneath. I told her that forgiveness isn't something you can schedule around pot roast and mashed potatoes. But I also told her that I'd like to try. Not to go back to what we were before, because what we were before was toxic, but to see if we can figure out how to be sisters who actually respect each other. I considered this. The Cassandra who had stolen my fiancé and humiliated me publicly would never have been capable of that kind of honest self-reflection. The woman standing next to me now, who had risked her life to gather evidence against a killer, was someone I was still getting to know. Dinner could be a start,
I said, finally. Really? Really. But I choose the restaurant. She laughed, the first genuine laugh I had heard from her before the rehearsal dinner. Fair enough. Just maybe somewhere without too many memories attached. A year later, I was standing in a very different kind of venue, watching a very different kind of celebration unfold. The grand opening of the Cassandra Mitchell Foundation was being held at the Riverside Community Center, in a neighborhood that had been revitalized partly due to development funds that had been seized from Jonathan Whitmore's criminal enterprise. My sister had used her experience as both victim and accomplice to create a program that helped people recognize and escape from sophisticated financial manipulation. The foundation worked with law enforcement, social services, and mental health professionals to identify patterns of coercive control and provide resources for people trying to rebuild their lives after being victimized.
She was good at it. Her ability to see through charm and identify manipulation tactics, skills that had once made her dangerous to people like me, now made her invaluable to people trying to protect themselves from predators like Jonathan. I watched her speaking to a group of potential donors, explaining how financial abuse worked and why traditional victim services often missed the warning signs. She was confident, but not calculating, persuasive, but not manipulative. She had learned to use her talents for something other than personal gain. Devon was there too, though we barely spoke beyond polite hellos. He had eventually rebuilt his construction business, focusing on smaller residential projects instead of the major commercial developments that had made him vulnerable to people like Jonathan. We moved in completely different circles now, our lives intersecting only occasionally at events like this. The awkwardness of our shared history had faded into the kind of distant politeness you might have with someone you had dated briefly in college. Whatever passion or compatibility we had once shared felt like it belonged to different people entirely. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca, who is now working with the FBI as a consultant on cases involving financial manipulation and coercive control. Watching the live stream from Denver, Cassandra looks amazing. You both do. The foundation's success had attracted national attention. Cassandra had been interviewed on news programs, spoken at conferences, and consulted with law enforcement agencies across the country. The story of two sisters who had overcome betrayal and manipulation to bring down a serial killer had become a case study in resilience and the power of choosing justice over revenge. But the real transformation hadn't happened in courtrooms or news interviews. It had happened gradually over months of difficult conversations, family therapy sessions, and the slow process of learning to trust each other again. We were different people now. I had built a new life focused on work that mattered, relationships that were honest, and a sense of self-worth that wasn't dependent on other people's validation. Cassandra had learned that real power came from helping others rather than exploiting them. As the evening wound down and the last donors left, Cassandra found me cleaning up empty wine glasses and discarded programs. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For seeing that I could be more than the worst thing I ever did." I looked at my sister, the woman who had once destroyed my wedding day, but had also risked her life to save others from the same predator who had manipulated us both. The relationship we had now wasn't the same as what we had before. It was more honest, more difficult, and infinitely more valuable. "You saved yourself, Cassandra. I just gave you the chance to do it." She hugged me then, the kind of embrace that carries the weight of everything you've been through together and everything you've forgiven. Outside, I could see photographers from the local paper taking pictures of the community center, documenting the success of a foundation built from the ruins of one family's darkest moment. Tomorrow, there would be articles about healing and redemption, about justice served and lives rebuilt. But tonight, I was just a woman who had learned that sometimes the best revenge is refusing to let someone else's betrayal define your story. Sometimes the greatest victory is helping others write better endings than the ones that were planned for them. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, You get to discover that the people who hurt you the most are also capable of becoming the people who help save others from the same pain. The foundation would help hundreds of people over the years to come. Jonathan Whitmore would spend the rest of his life in federal prison. And somewhere in the mountains of Colorado, Rebecca Morgan was living under her real name for the first time in 3 years. Justice, it turned out, tasted better than any revenge I could have imagined. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.